Hello, welcome to my first video on this new channel. I'm going to be starting with something that I've been wrestling with a lot recently, thinking about a lot, and in reality for a long time. I think a lot of people do, and that is how to find your purpose, which I think you could also put as how to find really alignment between how you're living your life, what you're doing in your life, and your true self. I think often many of us, dare I say most of us, have this feeling of something's missing. We're doing something that it's not really us. Society's told us, or parents, or we've just ended up here and we don't really know why. And recently, I've made a big change. I've moved away from my old career. A lot of the things that defined me, that built up my ego, my sense of self, that people knew me for. But I think this is some of the most important work you can do. And having thought about it a lot, I think I've found a very good way to really go about finding your purpose in a structured way. And the first thing I would say is that you should have an internal focus. So finding might not even be the right word. Finding purpose often sounds like you're going out and you're looking for something that is going to kind of make you whole. I think it is more kind of work of rediscovery and self-knowledge. And maybe that's why I find it so fascinating. These are topics that I've already been very fascinated about and that I've been researching and thinking about for a long time. So it's really kind of an inner work, going back and answering the hard questions of who am I? What lights a spark within me? What feels true? And it's not obvious how to go about this. A lot of us, or at least I speak for myself, over years and years of reinforcing certain identities, certain practices, you might feel like, I don't know, I don't know what that is anymore, or there is something that you love, but it feels impossible to make it into your career. You worry about bills and is it realistic, or what will other people think? I think to start, you need to put all of that to a side, and it's difficult enough to figure this out. So you want to kind of think about it in a purely hypothetical scenario, remove all the real life restrictions and limitations, and you can figure those out later on. But just start by figuring out, in principle, what would be some general themes, some general things that will point you in the right direction. That's another key kind of lens here, right? Don't be seeking one thing, like one kind of nugget that is going to solve all your identity problems, that is going to magically send you in the right direction and you have it figured out. This is more of kind of like working with a compass. You figure out the direction and you don't know what is going to lie down the road. But once you figure out the direction, things can unfold in the right direction. So that's really the key, finding these pointers. So we're going to go through 7 different methods, different ideas. I encourage you to use all of these because you will find overlap. You will notice themes, and then you kind of can really start to connect the dots, piece things together, and find new connections. So let's start with number 1. So number 1, the first part of this blueprint to discovering your purpose is going back to your childhood. This might sound cliche, but give it time. This one can be a little more sensitive because you really need to question things. Sometimes if I ask you about your childhood and what you like doing, you might have some ready-made answers that you've been told, your teachers, your parents, whoever it may be, or even things that you believed about yourself. But really take the time to question them. I think for me, the most useful things emerged when I was actually just meditating on this question for quite a few days. And you will have random memories of, oh yeah, I used to do that thing. Where did that come from? And I think the key things that you want to aim for is exactly that kind of thing that doesn't seem to have, doesn't seem to fit somehow. So it's not something that was popular in your country or your community, or something that your parents would have encouraged you to do, like a hobby that they already had. It's just something that you look at it and you think, where did I get that from? That must have been me. And I think those hints are very, very precious. And if you think about it enough, you'll come up with a little list, and they can be very small. It can even be, you remember a particular day where you were doing one thing and you really loved it. You want to think about what brought you joy, what energized you. So to give you a personal example, I remember getting my first digital camera when I was about 10 years old. And I just absolutely loved it. And I don't remember where that came from. Nobody took photos in my family really, but I loved going around my little village taking pictures of the animals, the flowers, the sky, everything I could find. And it was so exciting. I was so proud of it. It just brought me to life. And that's the kind of feeling that you're looking for. And you'll come up with a number of them. And like I said before, really try and question them. Because to give you another personal example, in the past, if somebody had asked me about how I was as a kid, I would have just kind of gone along with this idea that I always had. And this tends to happen because our minds don't like cognitive dissonance. So if you've spent your whole life believing that you're really good at sciences and math and this kind of thing, and that's become your career, then your brain doesn't want to find a piece of information that then gives you the conclusion of, oh, maybe that was all wrong, because that would be a massive blow. So you have to be very open-minded, and that's why I think coming at this from different angles, meditating, pay attention to your dreams, ask people who you haven't spoken to, like childhood friends or friends of your parents, or find old photos, really try and be objective about what did I do, what brought me joy as a child. And I think it's a very interesting kind of philosophical question even, because you really wonder, where did that come from? Are those things, like, did you come to this earth with certain skills and loves and like already a kind of path embedded in you? And if not, these things that no one else told you to like, how did you come up with that, right? They're very special to try and find these things. So I really encourage you to take your time with it. And the more you start thinking about it, journaling, that's another very good way to do it. These memories will come up. You'll think, oh, I used to do that thing. What was that about? And don't judge it. Maybe now it's something that doesn't necessarily sound that fun. Just make a note of it, right? Come back to it. And over time, this will really start to give you some hints. On to number 2. This is another one that I was kind of surprised by, but I found it works quite well. And it might be for the same reason as what I was explaining in number 1. And that is, it allows you to kind of move outside of yourself and see things from an objective point of view, not through your biased lens that you've created over the years. So number 2 is, what have people repeatedly complimented you over the years? What have they complimented you on? And the reason I think this one is powerful is because in general, unfortunately, I feel like people don't give that many compliments. Some of them are just, when they're generic and they don't have that much meaning. But sometimes someone will come along and say, oh, you were so something, something that you weren't quite expecting, or something that seems really, really honest. You're so empathetic with these people. You're so patient. You sounded so eloquent when you did this or that thing. You're naturally gifted at this or that. And I think we all have some of these things. And when I look back over my life, there's 2 or 3 things that I could come up with that random people at completely different times of my life have told me. And so that it's not just someone's opinion that might be wrong, and they're not just being nice. There's actually something there. And like I said, because people don't give that many compliments, or at least not very specific ones, not very genuine ones. And I'm talking about people that are outside of your family, like your parents complimenting you on every little success kind of distracts you from these things that are really, really special. So try and think of random people. I have all these examples, not that many, but maybe 7, 8 times I can think of in my life where the same 2 or 3 things people have commented on. There's something there. So try and think about those things, or ask your closest friends. Ask those people who are going to be honest with you, people who you feel really know you well. Just ask them, what stands out about me? What are some skills that I naturally have that you appreciate and that might not be that common? And it can be anything. I bet you will be surprised by what people tell you. On to number 3, which is your peak aliveness moments. So this is really just, I think, maybe the easiest one to do in a sense. And again, we're still focusing on the past. We'll get to present and future later on. But these are those moments where you want to look back over your life and you want to find that aliveness, that energy, that happiness, that beaming smile. Think of those moments, and it can be anything. And just really ask yourself, what was so special about it? Where was I? Who was I with? What was I doing? And I think you'll find some themes. For me, there was, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 moments in my life that just really jumped out as being, wow, that was such an amazing experience. I was so happy. And it doesn't have to be anything special. Sometimes it's just something pretty normal, but that was very meaningful to you. And when you start making note of where you were, who you were with, what kind of thing you were doing, again, you will see some patterns. For me, they tended to be in nature. They tend to be some deep connection with a few people around me. And it tended to be something that was quite active. So you start to see these themes: people, movement, nature. And, I'm sure those are quite common, but you can drill down further and try and pick out really all the little elements that make up those events. And what was it? What was it that made it so special? How did you feel about yourself, about the world? And these are not just the moments like a roller coaster or some vacation. These are things that are meaningful to you. When did you feel the most aligned with yourself? Often it's doing something that is actually challenging, something that you really wanted to do and was a challenge and ended up being very satisfying, and you were proud of. I'll make another video where I dive into all my own examples to give you a template. Maybe that would be helpful, but I don't want to distract you from your own ideas. So now we move on to the present, number 4, which is, what are you already doing with ease? Think about the things that you fill your life with and take 0 effort. For me, that would be things like reading books, consuming content, discovering myself, diving deep into new ideas that I find fascinating. If you look at your day, you have to try so hard not to judge yourself and not to start putting value on these things, saying, yeah, I do that, but that, that's not really me, or that's bad, or that couldn't be a career. No, just be objective. Think about it, and later you can see what comes out of it. Just see what you do with ease. Look at how you spend your days. Look at how you spend your free time. And that again will give you a little compass for what are you already naturally doing. This is kind of like a present version of the childhood exercise. Those things tell you something about you. And this goes hand in hand with the next point, number 5, which is, what are you very clear about not wanting to do or not liking? And again, if you think of the compass as our goal here, knowing where you're not going is just as useful as knowing where you are. It gives you direction, right? You can point away from something. So you may have certain things that you already know, hey, I don't like working in an office because of whatever it is, office politics, or working with this kind of person, or working in this kind of environment, or I don't like reading, or I'm shy, I definitely don't want to do something that is public facing. All these things, just really think about them and think about which are just something that maybe you would want to do, but bring you a little bit of hesitance. So for example, I imagine there's a lot of people, myself included, who do have a drive to do something like what I'm doing now, share a message with other people. It's a little bit uncomfortable. I feel a little bit timid doing this, but that wouldn't be something that is a no for me. That would just be something that is what I would call kind of good fear, right? The things that I know for sure I don't want to do is the example that naturally came to me, right? Like have a commute in a busy city and like work in a cubicle. No, right? I just don't want to do that. I know that. So I can easily move away from that kind of thing. And there can be so many things that you don't want to do, right? They can be across many different dimensions. So just really think about location, type of activities, type of people, all of these things. Whatever is a definite not for you, write it down. And that way we're starting to clearly construct where we're not going. We're starting to get some pointers towards where we are going. And even if you don't come out of this with a clear answer of like, oh, my purpose is to be a vet, I don't know, right? You'll have a direction. And once you have a direction, you will find your purpose because it's down that path somewhere, right? So just remember that it's about finding the direction. Now we're moving towards the future. So number 6, your fantasy self. Imagine, there's a lot of meditations that you can do on this, and you want to imagine just your dream future, right? Your dream life. And maybe some superficial things will come up, some things that are not that important. But you really want to ask yourself that famous question of, if money was no issue, right? If you had like millions and millions of dollars, and you had every possibility was open to you, it can be quite paralyzing to think this way, but there might be something that comes to you. What would you do? What would you love to do? Because ultimately, sometimes we get stuck in this trap, right, of working to achieve X, because then X will give us the thing that we want. But we get so caught up in this loop that you forget what you were doing it for. And then one day you achieve X and you're like, oh, why am I here? What was I doing this for? So we want to try and skip all these middle steps, skip this avoidance, and just look straight to the end, so to speak, the end goal. What do you want to do? It can be, a bit of a uncomfortable realization, but when you start to realize that life is not forever, that time is our most precious resource, we want to cut these middle steps out. You don't want to remove the journey, but you want the journey to be already aligned with your compass. That's basically what life is. You don't want the journey to be just some unpleasant steps so that you can achieve a momentary glory in something that you thought you wanted. That's not a good way. I've been there, and that doesn't really work. So ask yourself, what would you do? And again, remove any form of judgment. Don't think about, imagine you're just dreaming, okay? No one else knows. You don't have to worry about paying the bills. You don't have to worry about your current boss. Nothing. Just what would your dream scenario be? And take some time, because at the beginning you might come up with a superficial answer. Oh yeah, I would travel, do this, do that, chill on the beach. But you could try that and you would probably get bored quite quickly. So you want to drill a little deeper and connect to the other questions, the other earlier points. What would you do and what would really fulfill you? And maybe this is a useful transition point to the next, to the final point, which is number 7, which is, what would you do if you only had 1 year left to live? And again, there's some good meditations on this. I remember it made me quite emotional because it can really touch some uncomfortable buttons. But this is the hard work that we have to do now, I think, to avoid regret in the future. So start by asking yourself, do it now. Just close your eyes, ask yourself, what would I do if I just had 1 year left? You're healthy, you have resources, but you know that you have a 1 year timer. What are you going to do? Take some time, think about it, visualize it. Where are you going? Who are you with? What are the things that bring you joy? And then start scaling it back. What would you do if it was only 3 months? Think about that for a bit. Then bring it down to 1 month, then a week, and then maybe even a day. And the further you bring it in, the more you're forced to get rid of the superfluous stuff. And you'll end up with just some nuggets, some pointers of, wow, okay, this comes to my mind, whatever it is, this person, this environment, this action, this state of being. And those are very, very, very insightful. And these 2 last points go very well together. You can think of it in another way as well, which is, what would I be laughing at to be paid for? Some people have those jobs where they just find it so easy, so much fun, and they think, I can't believe that people are actually paying me to do this, right? This is just so, I would do this all day, every day for free. Try and think of some examples of what those things are. When you've finished all of these, I really hope that you've been doing them in order. Take your time, okay, to get out a journal, make some notes for each one. Maybe do 1 point a day. It's a lot, so space it out, and then try and find the connections. And I think when you unlock some connections, that will bring up new ideas. And I can guarantee you that over a week or a couple of weeks of thinking about these things, something will start to emerge. Listen to it, pay attention to your dreams, write them down if they come up. And yeah, hopefully things will start to materialize and you will start to get a clear idea of where your compass is heading. So I wish you the best of luck with that.